in your risk assessment. When you talk about activities such as skydiving or scuba diving, people that engage in those activities, they are more deliberate in trying to ensure their self-preservation and trying to ensure that they don't come to harm. So when we talk about risk assessment, it is a formalized process. So here you're deliberate, you're conscious about your actions. It's a formalized process of identifying hazards, evaluating risk, and either eliminating or controlling that risk to an acceptable level. And when you think about it, in a broader sense of things, risk assessment management, basically, when you talk about management, has to do with the organization as a whole. So that's where the definition also comes in. You can use either, it's the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling the threats to an organization. When you talk about risk assessment comes in for various activities, in terms of like financials. It's not just in health and safety, it's in so many things. But here today with you, we are sort of streamlined to the occupational health and safety aspect of risk assessment. So normally, there's a presumption or a myth that, if you carry out adequate risk assessment and all of that, you will have zero harm, that you will achieve zero harm. So I'm going to leave it to you to either agree or disagree that zero harm is actually possible in a process or a workplace. Yet still, we have statistical data of incidents occurring. But the major benefits of risk assessment and management is the prevention of accidents and ill health. That is the number one major reason why you should do this. But there are other important reasons as well. Sometimes it would also help you in terms of, I have all this listed here in terms of avoiding costs, direct or indirect costs, in terms of avoiding any form of legal action being taken against you as a person or your brand or your business. Excuse me. It also helps in terms of like stability of your business operations, not losing your value in front of your customers, with your employees. People still have a sense of belief in you to do the right thing and to do things safely. It's very important, basically. That's why we always tell people, try as much as possible to get your risk assessment done before you start your task, because then you can identify the hazards that are present. Now, this is a poll. I believe we're supposed to have a poll here, asking people different questions, because we'd like to have your opinions about this. We want to know what our audience thinks, and then we'll further, discuss about this at a later time. So we want to find out from you. So please take the poll. Let's know what your opinions are. Do you think risk can be reduced to zero? Do you think risk assessment is a primary management tool? And do you think risk assessment is a legal requirement for employers? Sometimes businesses try to cut corners, but we're not most businesses. We try as much as possible not to cut corners, yeah. So let me just put this out there, basically. If a country is a signatory to the ILO Convention, as regards occupational health and safety, it says that businesses they have a duty of care, basically, to ensure that a workplace so far is reasonably practicable without risk to employees. So this is generally an acceptable phrase that people say, oh, you know what? This means you need to meet a risk assessment need, like you have to get a risk assessment done. So let's just get the feedback and find out what people are thinking here. 61% of people signed in have answered. If you're one of those who haven't, okay, 100% here. Okay. So I don't know if the poll is ended yet, but we're just going to go on to the next. We'll talk about the polls at a later time. Okay, now down to the business of the day. This is the key aspect of carrying out risk assessments. 5 steps to carry out a risk assessment. You need to be very specific about the steps you intend to utilize. So this is me going back to basics here when it comes to risk assessment. Number 1, you need to identify the hazards. As I said earlier on, terminologies we might come across. A hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm. 2, you need to be able to identify the people who might be harmed and how that can occur. Number 3, you need to be able to evaluate the risk and decide on the precautions you intend to use. And number 4, you need to record your significant findings and implement them. And lastly, you need to be able to review your assessments and also update as needed. So we're going to start with 1. What is hazard identification? We all know what a hazard is now. So how do we spot this hazard? So number 1 here on my list is tax analysis. So I'll tell you why this is at the top there as a priority, basically. If you do tax analysis, it helps you identify the hazards before you start your process or activity. So what does SREDIM mean? Basically, it just means that as an organization or a business or whosoever, the team that's going to be responsible for hazard identification, you need to select the task. You need to record the steps and stages of the task. You need to evaluate the risk in each task and also develop a safe working method, implement your safe working method, and then monitor what you've implemented to be sure that it's working in the way you intend for it to work. So tax analysis allows you to engage with the whole process, basically, of the whole process, the system. Now, when we talk about observations, we have things like, when you're doing like inspections, for example, inspections are good, they're very good, but it might be limited in the sense that means you're doing your risk assessment when your process has already started, so it happens when business are in continuity. So you can always go back and say, I want to do like another hazard identification and all of that. So that's also a good one as well. But as I said, different things have their limitations. So when we talk about incident data and reports, that's also very good, most especially if you want to start a business or a process that is already in existence. There's already existing. So you just have that data from somewhere else, and then you can use that as a foundation upon which you build your own solutions to ensure what has happened to them doesn't happen to you. That's why I would always say consult your data and report. And more often than not, if your country has a national database, that's actually quite good, because that's going to be expected to be more subjective. But in some places, that might not be the case, basically. So depending on where you are, you use what works best for you. Talk about consulting people already in the establishment. Talk about consulting people already in the establishment. Talk about manufacturers' information. We're talking about the manufacturer's data sheets. So when you have things like new equipment, the people who produce all these things, they already know the limitations, they already know the inherent hazards that are present, and they've detailed all this for you in the data sheet. So all you need to do is read it, and you know that, okay, this is there, it exists, and you're aware about it. Talk about MSD, like when you get your substances and all of that. They come with their information. So you need to read all these things. When you talk about legislation as well, some countries already have established guidance as to how things should work, how processes should be done. So if you're in a country or a location that already has these legislations or guidance, you need to use that as well. You need to follow that. That's also a very good one. So another way for you to identify hazard is to categorize them. You cannot find something if you don't know what you're looking for. So you need to know what you're looking for. So you understand the kind of environment you're going to. So when you categorize the kind of hazards you expect to find, it helps you in terms of identifying this hazard. So it's always important for you to try as much as possible to categorize them. So these are different categories that you can utilize. We have biological, chemical, ergonomic, environmental, psychosocial, physical. So it's also a nice one there, basically. It will help you. Now, step 2, who might be harmed and how? Most times when we think about harm coming to somebody, we're thinking about the person doing the job. Oh, sometimes it's not only about the person doing the job. It might not be direct, it might be indirect. For example, a passerby who is not involved in the process, members of the public, a visitor to the establishment. These are, people that can be harmed by a process that they are not directly involved with. So you should be thinking not only about people who do the work, but also people who are in that environment. And when you're thinking about this, when you're doing your risk assessment, you don't necessarily need to start writing individual names of people. Think of them as being in groups. For example, you can see on the picture here, we have an expectant mother, we have employees, we have young persons. If you look here, we have like a worker going into a manhole. We can categorize him as, he's a lone worker. Different categories. You have maintenance staff, visitors, contractors, group them. Because sometimes you have groups who you believe are learned and knowledgeable enough to keep themselves safe, but due to one reason or the other, they might be unsafe. So we talked about who might be harmed and how. Now we're talking about how. As I said, you might have individuals who they've been trained, they're good to go. You really can't think of, you really can't think of a reason why, but they might be exposed to processes or ways that can actually harm them. For example, if you're talking about, say, a maintenance worker, someone who's gone to maintain a machine and he's removed the safeguards in place, and then something happens, he gets harmed, right? So you need to think of all the contingencies that can happen, all the things. Sorry, I said all the contingencies. You need to think of all the things, the possibilities of situations that can happen. Talk about a fire, for example, and I mean, you have in the workplace, there's a picture here of someone in a wheelchair. Now, an addition to this is that this individual is supposedly deaf, and now there's a fire. Although you have, access for people who are in wheelchairs, have you taken into consideration what if the person can't hear the fire alarm? What if this person is working alone in a room? Are there processes in place? Do they have like a body system? Is there anything that would vibrate to let the person know that, oh, fire alarm has actually gone off? You need to step out of this place, Environmental contamination, that's another one as well. You can have a gas leak and members of the public will be affected by that gas leak, not only the people who work, with the gas situation and all of that. So this is another poll for you. I would encourage you to try and, as much as possible, to click an answer, and we can discuss this later on.
There's no work.
Hello?
He will tell you.
Okay, that's not for me. So we've talked about identifying hazards. Now, for people who are engaged already in the system or in different types of businesses, can you get rid of all the hazards in your workplace? Do you believe this? Do you have an effective risk control procedure in your place of work? Now, for those who are joining Kafela for the first time, do you see Kafela as a business or company that you would call to come and check out your risk assessment for you? So we want to get your feedback. We want to know how you perceive us, how you view us, because we want to do business with you. We want to share our expertise. We want to be able to help you achieve, safe processes, zero harm, and more. So please answer the questions in the poll. Would like to get the feedback from you. Thank you very much for being here, for joining us in our session. We appreciate your presence. Okay, I think I'm going to go to the next slide now. Wow, please answer the questions in the polls. We still have a lot of people who haven't done that. Okay, I think this is just acting like a mini break session for us. So going on to the next slide, we're still waiting for you to answer the poll questions. So 51% have participated. Please, would like everyone to participate. it's good to take data. I don't know if it's something we're very familiar with in this our side of the world, but data is important. It helps you, for next time when you're planning so that you can do better. So please, please, please answer the poll. Thank you very much. 59%, wow, 60, okay. This is good. Would like to move on to the next topic of discussion, but we really appreciate those polls to go up. It's not too hard. Can you get rid of all the hazards in your workplace? And do you have effective risk control procedures in your place of work? They are anonymous, by the way, these polls. I believe they are anonymous. So please feel free. Don't say, oh, I don't know. I don't want to answer this. Please do feel free to answer. And then we can move on to the next slide where we'll be talking about evaluating your risk, which is very important because sometimes you get people calling up and saying, oh, how do I do this? How do I evaluate my risks? How do I do this? So we're going to show you all of that so you don't need to crack your brains too hard, going back to the basics of risk assessment. So now I'm going to move on from here. So yes, evaluate the risk. And take the necessary precaution. So we all remember our initial definition about risks, the likelihood that a hazard will cause harm in combination of the severity of loss, harm and all of that might occur. So now, here I've said qualitative words to describe risk. Sometimes when you pick up a document, you say, oh, very high, medium, low, insignificant. These are qualitative terms that people use to describe risks. And it's not necessarily consistent because someone's understanding of what high is might be medium to you. Someone's understanding of low might be high to you. So it's not very consistent. So one thing that is consistent is, okay, let me try and go to the next slide. Yeah, one thing that is consistent is trying to quantify risk using a scoring system. Good. That's something that I like. I don't know if you like it, but is a system that works. And one thing about evaluating your risk is you need to establish what you mean. Like here, we've said 1, extremely unlikely, 2, unlikely. So for example now, I'm going to give an example here. If we have a very simple one, if we have a trailing cable, this is a very popular example used all over. If we have a trailing cable, for example, in a busy room where a lot of people are working, and what's the likelihood that somebody would probably trip and fall from that? Very probable, is likely, right? Let's say likely 4. So now, what's the expectation as regards severity? Let's say this is a place with a lot of, elderly people. I know this popular saying about elderly people, right? They're kind of, not so strong. So there's a possibility that they would need hospital treatment. But if that same cable is in another, maybe in that same building, but in another area where the human traffic is not much, then we can just say, oh, you know what, it's extremely unlikely that somebody would trip. And even if they do, if someone actually does finally trip, what's the severity? It's still the same 4. The person probably still needs to go to a hospital because they're all elderly in the building and all of that. So here you can easily quantify that the same hazard, the cable that has the potential to cause harm, still has the same severity, but varying likelihood, right? So that's why we say scoring system is very good. It's easy to understand. You can use it everywhere, anywhere, and everyone understands what you're saying. So here we have a risk matrix. This is something that's very popular. Oh, what do I use? 3 by 3, 5 by 5, whatever works for you, whatever works for your business. Sometimes we just lift some of all this data without even checking properly what industry did this come from. So you always need to be very deliberate. With your risk matrix, you always need to be very deliberate. Does this work for me? You need to define what works for you. If a 5 by 5 matrix works for you, that's fine. So this is just color coded. You can see likelihood, severity. Green is low risk, red is high risk. It just shows different levels of how they can be categorized. And this is the risk rating. So we said risk is likelihood times severity. So when you multiply, we've used the number system now, right? So when you multiply it, depending on the outcome, you can have acceptable, tolerable, unacceptable. So what do we mean by this, basically? When something is not acceptable, you mean that you can't even start work. You need to put your controls in place before you actually start. When we say something is acceptable, that means, okay, if there's any residual risk, maybe there's no issues there, it's probably okay. If we say something is tolerable, how tolerable is it? Do you need to implement additional controls as soon as possible, say within 24 hours, or do you need to give it like 1 week? What works for you? Now, there's something we need to know. Remember, initially, we talked about the legal guidance or requirements in countries. These actually, you can't come out and say, oh, I've done this tax and I've identified my hazard and okay, this one is acceptable. If the legal requirements says there's not, like, you can't actually do that, this is what we want, this is the standard we want, then it makes your risk assessment redundant because that always overrides. You need to follow the legal requirements. So you need to be very careful. You need to be very sure. That's why we say we always check the legal requirements wherever you are to ensure that your processes are all in line. And when you're doing your risk assessment, you have to take into account all the different conditions that occur. You need to test your different procedures, everything. These are factors that would affect your evaluation, your risk assessment. So duration and frequency of exposure, how many individuals are you dealing with, what kind of equipment. So when you think about all these factors, that also helps you determine your risk matrix that you're going to use, determines the level, what you would refer to as being high or medium, how practical are you going to be with your solution. So we talked about evaluating the risk, right? I hope you've understood what we're talking about here. Acceptable, tolerable. Now, when we talk about residual risk, this is a risk that remains even like when you've finished putting in your controls. It's just there, it's residual. Now, what you need to ask yourself, is this tolerable? Is it unacceptable? Is it acceptable? You need to make a decision. You need to know exactly what it is. When we talk about establishing precaution, this is one of the most important aspects of your risk assessment. You need to establish precaution. Now, in summary, we can say, oh, when you're thinking about establishing precautions, you need to try as much as possible to eliminate the hazard, create a safe space, and create a safe individual. Before we go into hierarchy of control, the general principle when it comes to safety is, can you eliminate the hazard? And more often than not, that comes in before you start your processes, because that's when it's cheapest. You know, when you're doing your design and your planning, when you identify the hazards in your design phase, you can easily eliminate it, rather than when you've already established your processes and systems, then you're now trying to like eliminate your hazard. It might be more expensive, it might be more difficult to do. So sometimes when people are not able to do this, they try to substitute, that's replace. And if that doesn't work, they try engineering controls. That is to deliberately isolate people from the hazard. So people are separated from the hazard before it occurs. And if that doesn't work, we have administrative controls, change the way people work, take them for trainings. There's a lot of human factor here and behavioral issues involved here. And then we talk about PPE, that's a personal protective equipment to protect the worker. That's the least effective. So we have most effective, least effective. So before you start a process, a tax, is always good to do your risk assessment so you can eliminate the hazard before you begin. That's the best advice here. Now, still talking about precautions to take, avoid and prevent the risk, mitigate the risks, adapt to technological processes, develop your policies. So these are just general statements of precautions that one should adhere to when trying to ensure that they reduce the risk that comes to them, to make sure they achieve zero harm, basically. So next, record your findings and implement them. I just need to make this clear. There is no standard format to record. When I talk about no standard format, I'm referring to, is it just written? You can write it might be a written document. You can, upload it onto the cloud system. You can have it online. But there are basic principles that still apply when recording. And these are things you need to have on your documents. You need to identify the activity. You need to identify the area that was assessed, the processes, hazards identified, groups at risk. Although there's no definite format, but when you have your document put together, these are key things that should be in your document. Date it was reviewed, who was the assessor, was the person, obviously the person has to be competent. And when we talk about risk assessment and it being done with a competent person, it's always advisable that it shouldn't be one person, it should be like a group of people, a team. So then they have different opinions, different perceptions from different individuals, rather than when it's just one person that's doing it. So action plan for further precautions, has the risk been evaluated to adequate measures, are controls in place? These are key content for your data, for your records. These are the key content that needs to go in there. And when you're done, you need to review and update as when needed. So now, when you've done your risk assessment, what will make you review that risk assessment? There's so many reasons. Maybe the risk assessment has passed its time. Maybe it's been there for quite a while. Maybe there's been a change in personnel. Did any incidents occur even after putting controls in place? You need to check this and find out what went wrong. Did you bring in a new equipment? Once you've done your risk assessment, you're not supposed to introduce new hazards into that place. So when something changes, you need to do a different risk assessment. Has there been a change in legislation? Have you consulted the workers? Did they notice something you missed out? So it's mostly when there's a significant change within the workplace or process that you review your risk assessment. So I want to say thank you very much. I believe we've come to the end of this presentation. Now we can take your questions. Any questions you have for us, please feel free to share. The floor is open for everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Kurat. In fact, I was still enjoying myself. Look, my notepad, I have a whole lot of notes written down here. Thank you so much. That was a very good presentation, and the immense of knowledge was very good. So to the rest of the team, if you have any questions, kindly raise a hand and you'll be given the chance to talk. Or if you want to use the chat box, please go right ahead and all questions will be addressed. But I want to ask. Hello. Yes, I want to ask.
I can hear you.
Okay. I want to, so whilst we are still waiting for questions to come through, I want to ask from Eric, was it a part that resonated with you more?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Hello, Sarah, can you come again? Yes, sorry.
I'm asking, was there a part that you resonate with more, or you want to?
Yes, so that the truth is that I've actually enjoyed the presentation. I mean, the volume of information that has been shared, and this is not just any information. these are for those who have been in the field and are more technical when it comes to risk assessment. You come across most of the terminologies that have been used by Kuburat in this presentation. And for once, I felt like I was in a Nebosh class and, a trained lecturer or tutor doing his or her thing. Seriously, this is one of the presentations I've really loved. Kuburat, great work. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So we have a hand up. Obed, kindly. Okay, so yes, you have been unmuted. You can go ahead with your question.
Okay, good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Pardon me if my question is not so technical. I'm not an expert in the industry, but I've worked in the industry for quite a number of years.
Obed, feel free, go right ahead.
My question has to do with in the industry. I know that you have to put in place measures to check hazard, and also have in place risk assessment policies. Is there a law backing this for the industry, or there's no law? And if there's a law, what are the punitive measures in place in case an employer fails to put such measures in place? Thank you.
Okay, Obed, so if I get your question, you are asking if risk assessment is backed by the law, and what are the punitive measures if an organization does not? Is that the question?
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Kuburat, would you want to take that?
I'll jump on that quickly.
Okay, Chief.
All right, good.
Great, yes, go ahead.
There is a law, and when people talk about law, we need to always go back to where we all derive the health and safety law from, the ILO Convention. The ILO Convention, which all United Nations organizations have subscribed to in terms of the binding obligations of how we go about managing health and safety globally, does recognize the fact that nations, organizations, employers must risk assess their activities to make sure that workers are not exposed to anything that could affect their health and safety at work. You take that from the ILO Convention in terms of their C-155 and part of their obligation. Every country now takes it into their country and enshrine it into their local law. If you go under the Factories Act of Nigeria, you will find it there. If you come to United Kingdom, where I'm based, we have it under the management of the health and safety at work regulations. If you go to Ghana, Ghana will have it in their Factories Act. If you go to Cote d'Ivoire, they will have it there. So it is a law that you must assess the risk that your employees are employed to. So I hope that answers that question. So every country will have their own, what we call local or respective law and their section. So it will be very difficult to say in Ghana, this is what it is. But in United Kingdom, you've got to have a risk assessment in place for activities that your employees, workers may be exposed to. COVID was a big one where we all have to start doing a COVID risk assessment. You do risk assessment for everything, even traffic. You do it for welfare as well. You must demonstrate how you are assessing the likelihood of the harm, causing harm, and the severity. And what measures have you put in place to be able to deal with that risk is what they want to see. And that will ensure that you are not punished by law. As you rightly said, if you don't abide by the law, then definitely you are liable to be punished. You must demonstrate. And that is why we record it. You have to record it in whatever template you want to do that as well. It may also interest people to obviously know as well that it goes as far as saying to us that operates in United Kingdom, if you got a risk assessment, is when you have more than 5 people that you record it. If you have less than 5 people, it's bureaucratic. You don't really need to be doing that record. So I hope that answers your question, Obed.
Yes, please,
great.
but I have a quick follow-up question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay,
Okay, so the follow-up is, now that we all know that there are organizations that's standing for the ILO in terms of risk and safety,
Yeah.
I want to find out, in case your employer fails to abide by these, is there a way you can take them on? And aside that, you see, there are some health and safety practitioners who may try to record in case there is a hazard or there's an accident at the workplace.
Yeah.
Now, after reporting, they have to take it to their employers or managers.
Yeah.
These managers may decide to sit on it, or even penalize the health and safety practitioner for trying to record such a hazard or a harm. What are in place for such a safety practitioner in case he or she miss such an event?
If you don't mind, I'll take that on again. It is very difficult. It is very difficult to come on air and talk about safety cultures in various organizations. The law is clear. The employer is responsible to make sure that they take care duly of the state of well-being. Anything that can cause injury, you've got to risk assess it. If individuals decide to deviate, or an organization decides to deviate, it's very, very difficult for someone like me to come on air and say, do this, do that, do that. The challenge we have in some parts of the world is enforcement. There's something you can call a whistleblower. You can call on the Ghanaian Health and Safety Authority. You can whistleblow to Lagos State Safety Commission and say, there's something wrong here. They are the enforcement agency. They are the ones that need to be enforcing that these ILO conventions, which is enshrined in the Nigerian Factories Act, in the Ghanaian Factories Act, are being definitely complied by workers. Every organization has their own safety culture, and it's very difficult for us to understand. And Obed, we need to first of all appreciate something. People may not like these statements I'm going to make. Safety is not an African way of life. We are trying to imbibe in something. And it is people like you and the other 37 people I've got on this call that are safety professionals that is going to have this change of mind. We need to stop comparing to United Kingdom. United Kingdom got their Health and Safety at Work Act in 1974. You're talking about 47 years ago. Oh, sorry. You're talking about a couple of about 47 years ago that they got this law. Sorry, 50. I'm struggling with my maths here. Someone should bail me out. 1974 will be what? To 2021. You're talking about 47 years that they've taken to get to where they are. So we ourselves, we have to change our culture. But the law is there. I always say it, and I still maintain it, and I'll say this online. Especially in Nigeria, I see health and safety law being the future EFCC in Nigeria, where someone will come in and say, I'm going to this company. I don't want to call names online. And I'm going to go in there because there is a law. Please, let's get it right. There's a law. But if there's nobody to enforce that law, we're going to have young guys, and he's one of the guys I admire in Nigeria, the new EFCC type of chairman. You're going to have young people like him coming in. And if you permit me, if you have time, I will play a video that this guy did and say, one day, I want to operate an EFCC where there will be policy and laws in place, not what one person says. Obed, if you have time, wait to watch the video of this young guy, and you will pick up from there that these policies must be adhered to by everybody. Who is one guy to sit on something? Who is he? He's a nobody. But again, that is what our culture breeds, and that is what our culture gives to us. So it's very difficult, but the law is the law. If you've got minutes, please stay to watch the video of the EFCC chairman where he says, my dream is one day I will call an officer and say, go and do something. And the officer will say, no, I'm not going to do it. And he will ask him, why are you not doing it? And the guy will say, I'm not doing it because our policy, section 123 says, we should not be doing this. And that day it will feel fulfilled. It's the same thing about the risk assessment. Everybody, your workers at work should be asking you, Obed, where is our risk assessment before I carry out my work? All this is based on the fact that you have a policy in place that says there's a risk assessment in place. And when we go back to the NIBOSH class, it is my right for the employer to give me all the necessary information with regards to health and safety. Risk assessment is one of it. Oga, where is your risk assessment for the job you're asking me to do? It is my right. It's not a privilege. It's not an entitlement. It's my right to be given. Show me the risk assessment. How many workers ask for it? Let's go back to us as professionals. How many of us safety professionals even do it? Before you start talking about someone sitting on it. It's a culture change. And that is what I hope people like Young Ayamu, Temitope Owoyemi, Israel, Emmanuel, all the Emmanuels, the Okim, even you, Obed, will change as a culture. And that's what we need to imbibe. And that's what we need to take away from today's culture and from this wonderful presentation. Eric, you have something to say?
I'm okay with
yes.
feedback. Thanks very much.
Okay, so this is just a contribution to what has already been said on whether or not we have laws and regulations for companies or employers to have risk assessment for their operations. So I'm going to be a little biased with my submission since I'm going to be talking from the oil and gas industry in Ghana. So appears I don't know whether you've heard about LI 2258, but it's a health, safety, and environmental regulation for that came from the Petroleum Commission of Ghana to regulate the activities of companies that are operating in our upstream oil and gas industry. And one of the requirements for any of the companies is to have a safety case in place. I know a safety case is a structured document that is in a form of a justification to how you are going to do your work safely and making sure that you are going to operate in a very optimized manner, especially when it comes to health and safety. Mostly in the safety case, when developing a safety case, you can't do without your risk assessment. You can't do without your hazard or your hazard studies about your operation. So yes, there are laws and there are regulations that enforces companies and employers to ensure that they have some of these systems in Ghana. Mostly for Ghana, we are yet to have a mother body that will be taking care of health and safety. I know there's a bill in Parliament as we speak that is going through the necessary approvals. But until then, most industry have regulators, government regulators. So when you take the mining industry, for instance, you have the Mineral Act that governs their operations. When you take the oil and gas, you have the Petroleum Commission that governs their operations. And all of them have this requirement, have this as a requirement for companies to comply with or abide to in order for them to be given the opportunity to operate in the offshore or our oil and gas sector. So yes, we do have this just contribution to what has already been said by Chief. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Eric. So we have another question in the chat box. So the question is, please, what can someone do in a situation whereby HSE didn't have a backup of the management, like them taking their gain, that is production, over the safety of the staff, but they refuse safety implementation? So this question is coming from Temi, yeah.
Temitope is one of the easiest questions I will answer for you. Invite Kafela Global Concept Limited to come into your organization and do a free training for your top management. There are sometimes some of us as health and safety people internally, they don't listen to you. Invite, we're not charging you, free of charge. Get someone to come in and talk to them. The value of health and safety. So me talk about, I run a business. If I can make a business case to my management, why will I not want money? Your company has not set up your organization for it to go down the drain. One of the challenges I find in safety when I talk to owners, I happen to be a fellow of the IOD, Institute of Directors. So I talk to a lot of my directors. Is the communication skill sets of safety professionals not being able to make what I call a business case. We complicate issue. You tell a director, people will die. Everything is died from safety point of view. If you don't do this, they will die. The director understands money. Let him understand that you are there to make sure they make money. Safety never talks money. It's always someone will die. It is dangerous. Everything is going to go wrong. Let your director understand the value, the business case of safety. Let him understand that because something has not happened does not mean it is not bound to happen. I'm not online to glorify the fire incidents that happened in Abuja. I'm not going to call names. I'm sure when you talk to that guy, you'll be like, in Jesus Christ, it will not happen. You build a building and have a shopping mall. It's a no-brainer that who advised him about sprinklers, that there is a possibility or a risk of fire to happen. Who spoke to him? Who showed him videos of where it has happened in the world altogether? That's why I say, tell us to come in and do a free training. It's free of charge. And then let's have a bet if your safety culture does not change. You don't fight all your battles all by yourself. There are some battles that you will invite people. But you as well, please get in touch with us personally. It's the business case you need to make. Why will management not be interested in safety? Tell me. They will be interested in safety, but it's the approach, it's our communications, it's how we are putting the case across to people. And it could be the mode of delivery. Extremely important. I'm a business owner. I want to make money. So if someone is telling me something can happen to me, I will be interested in it. But again, there's some aspect where, because it is you, talking to the director, it's not just going to listen to you. So it might be valuable for other people to, do it in another form as well and build case studies. Build case studies all for them to be able to obviously know as well. And let me tell you, there's nowhere in the world that they tell you safety does not make money. But please, let's stop this thing when we are talking to everybody. If you don't do this, it's dangerous. They will die. They will do this. They will die. There are other arguments we can give. Retentions of staff morale. Being the company people want to do business with. And you are aware of the implication it can have to your name, to your reputational image as well. Let's move away from this die attitude. It is what business owners don't want to die, especially in Nigeria. Massive company of 200 million. If a worker dies, I employ another one. So what? Talk to him about other cases that can happen. And then you will see his attitude will obviously change. So again, it's one of those areas that we can look about and talk about that as well. I see another interesting question from Emeka Okpara. Emeka,
yeah, I was going to read.
Emeka, it is very easy. This is a very, very easy one. And some of you will not like my answer. It's for people like you to get involved in the safety governance of Nigeria. Let's stop shying away from being part and parcel of eSport. We need people like you to set up a pressure group. Let's stop waiting for government and African leaders. Let's set up pressure groups. We look at UK. Do you think UK got to where it is? Please do a research. Stop looking at finished products. Go back into their history and read how they got to where that we are. People like you should stand up for positions. My name is Oluwafela Ajayi. I will back you up financially if you decide to stand up for a position in your governance of health and safety. It's not by mouth that we do that. We need to get people like you into the position to obviously do it. Who is the Nigerian government? The Nigerian government is people like you, people like Kubrat, not that entity. So please, let's get in. Let's form pressure groups. And let's continue to do webinar sections like this to create awareness. Invite your friends to join. The more apostles we win, the better it is. That is how you form a mass product. That is how you change society. Awareness is the first key area. And that is what we must imbibe. It's the way forward, my brother. Let us start making our own Nigerian safety law. Let's make our Nigerian safety procedure. Please go to South Africa. South Africa don't use UK law. They don't use American law. They use SIOS law. South African law for South African people. That's the same thing we should do in Nigeria and Ghana. Let's stop talking about government. Who is government? We are the government. That word, it's like that. We are the government. It's people like you and people like me. Let's continue to hang around every fortnight and have this discussion. Then we will change the society. That's my belief. I don't have that answer to that question. If I tell you how I'm going to answer it, but please, people like you should stand for position in your Nigerian safety organization. I refuse to call names online. Then people like Obed should stand for position as well in the Ghanaian Safety Association and call me and say, Chief, I need to print posters and I will support you financially, because it is people like you that should be there, not the current people that are there. So we need to make sure we have square pegs and square holes for it to work. And that is who people like you are. And that is what we should be looking at.
Okay, great submission from Chief. Please, do we still have any question? I saw a hand from Young. He has lowered his hand. Young, do you still want to go ahead with your question?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Before I do that, I want to commend the contributor, the Mr. Olushola Ajayi, right? I'm not mistaken your name. You actually contributed so well. You said my mind about having a pressure group, which is very lovely in safety. But my question goes that even if we are able to, is it possible to eliminate, or is that a methodology to eliminate residual risk at workplace? Is that a methodology or possibility to eliminate residual risk? Yes, I actually want to, because I've been thinking about that all this while, and I was like, that should be a means, that should be a methodology to eliminate residual risk.
Okay. What we're going to do is, you've brought an interesting topic called residual risk, which will lead to a part 2 of the risk assessment. A residual risk means after you've put in all the necessary control measures in place. However, due to the fact that you acknowledge, you accept that this will remain as it is, I'm happy to manage and live with this risk. So you believe it's remaining. But however, with permit to work, with training, with supervision, we are okay. And how do you arrive at this type of a situation? A lot of things are money. I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to put that in place. Well, are you telling me all I need to do is, before I do this, I must have ABC in place? That's not a problem. I can do with that. I can manage with that. It's fine. And that is where you always want to have a lot of those in place. I belong to construction, health, and safety. I've never worked in the oil industry, so that's why I'm not rich. In construction industry, we always deal with residual risk and say, you know what? We don't have the money to do this, but we've done as reasonable, we've done so far. So we call it the SAFAP law in health and safety. So far as is reasonable, practicable. We have been able to deal with A and B and C, but we couldn't do much about D. So we are left with this. Well, as long as you do A and B and C, you should be okay. You've got to employ competent people. You've got to have the permit to work in place. You have to ensure the people that will be doing this, they have the required PPE. If you do all those, it's fine. But we could have eliminated if we add A, but we couldn't do that. So we'll be looking forward to another section on residual risk, tolerable risk, and a lot of those as well. So there are some times that people do manage it, and they manage it effectively well as well. Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Young? Young, does that answer your question? Okay, it's just okay.
Hello, Young.
I said yes, it does. Yes, I said yes, it does answer my question. Very, very, it does. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Too Young. We have another question too also in the chat. Can we say trip is a hazard? I have seen that being written under the column of hazard in some risk assessment found online.
Emmanuel, you are currently doing NIBOSH in my class, where we will treat this in class next week, okay? You hear me, Emmanuel? Come to class next week, we will treat this one, okay? You must show me where you
sir, no problem.
You must show me where you found this one in class, eh? You want to get answer for your IG2. There's no cheating, there's no expo for you. Park the bus, carry on. I'm not going to answer that except Eric or Sadat answer. Me, I will not tell you this one. You want expo? I'm not giving you expo. Eric, Sadat, Ronald, answer it. I'm not answering this one. The man wants expo for the next NIBOSH section. For the ongoing NIBOSH class. Eric, answer him. Pass it on to Eric. Eric, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Chief. Okay, so before I answer that, I want to give my own perspective on the question that was asked earlier, whether or not we can eliminate a residual risk. So I'm going to make a stand with Chief. Just as he rightly explained, residual risk is you saying that, okay, this was the risk, I've done everything, I've put up all the necessary things I'm supposed to do. However, there's still some remaining risks that I may have to deal with and manage in order for me to be able to go about and do that particular task. So you eliminating a residual risk, I think the only way you can do that is to say that I'm not going to do the work. That's why you can say you have eliminated it completely. However, if you want the work to still go on, then you have to manage it, and you manage it with the risk management tool. Some of the risk management tool Chief has already mentioned, which is the permit to work, you having training, induction sites, walkthroughs, and all that. So that is that on the question that was asked by our senior brother. Okay, so as to whether a trip is a hazard, we know the definition of a hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm. And you and I know if you trip, it's likely you are going to fall. And if you fall, there are so many things that can happen to you. You may definitely be hurt or be harmed when you fall. So trip is a hazard. And mostly we call it either a trip, slip, and fall hazard. Yeah. So I don't know whether that answers you.
Emmanuel, are you okay?
Okay. Okay. Under that, can you hear me?
Yes. There is some background noise coming from your end. If you can check that. Okay, Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Okay, I've seen some risk assessment whereby instead of the assessor being specific about the hazards, they'll just indicate just trip only. Like this trip now it's let me say it comprises of so many things. It can also a trailing cable on the floor can also be tripped, and also an obstructed walkway or a metal scrap lying on the passageway can also be a trip. So I'm only my concern is it okay to just say trip, or is it okay for you to just be specific when documenting your risk assessment?
Emmanuel, I know you're currently in the NIBOSH class, and one of the things I said to you today when we were doing financial reasons of why we manage health and safety. Can you remember what I said about direct, indirect, insured costs? Do you remember? Share share with us what my answer was. Like they're asking you a question, you have to do. Do you remember what that conversation was about?
On that, you said that you have to be specific.
Thank you very much.
On that, you said you have to be specific.
Thank you. Right. So you may have 10 trip hazards. The control measures we are going to have for those 10 trip hazards will be different. People trip over cables. You could trip over an object. So you've got to have different controls. And if you're doing a risk assessment in a working place, it's going to be, different as to how you manage that as well. Okay. So when people write the word trip, you will query the competency of that assessor. What am I tripping over? Where? How? And remember, Cobra spoke about the who column, which we're going to do next on Sunday in the neighbors class as well. You've got to be specific. So when you see that, just know that risk assessment has not been done the way it should be done. And that is what you always have to ask that question, how specific are they? Because if you're not specific, how will I know what am I tripping over? Is it a carton? Is it cartons? Is it equipment? Is it cables? So you've got to be much more specific. That would have been done. And if we go back, it's a normal type of a risk assessment that someone will ask for in a group. They'll pass it on to you, and then the person wrote trip hazard over cables. But you are working in an office where they don't have a cable. So you now delete that cable away and put trip alone. That's because it's copy and paste. because it tells you identify the hazard. And Kupura says a hazard is anything that has got the potential to cause harm. So what is that thing that will cause you harm? You need to tell us what that thing is. And these are the things we put in front of our MD that we say trip over what? Trip on what? Safety, go away, Jerry. That's a problem that we have. Health and safety guys not able to communicate and say, what am I tripping over? Where? So it's a lot more. You can't just write trip. And that's a challenge. Okay?
Yes. Thank you, Chief. I see a hand from Young, sorry. Are you okay?
I still have another question.
You have another question. Okay, please go ahead. After that, Okafor comes in. Go ahead.
Okay. I've also seen a risk assessment whereby on the hazard column, electrocution was used as an hazard.
Mm-hmm.
So some time ago, I was having an argument with a colleague. I was telling him that I'm not okay with electrocution being in an hazard column. Electricity would have been. So having electrocution as an hazard, is it right or wrong?
The question still goes back to how do I get electrocuted? You can get electrocuted in many ways. How? That's what your MD will ask you. Electrical, wait, what? How? You have to be specific. This is one of the reasons people feel nibosh. We love this big grammar in our part of the world. You have to take it to the basics. Coming in contact with a naked cable. That's how. You've got to take it to the basics. Electricity jumping. You have to tell us how that will happen. That's what we call you identifying the hazard, not just dropping a category of what the hazard is. So we have to be specific in it. And I'll be dying to see what you write in your IG2 risk assessment, because you seem to be seeing a lot on the internet, and I'm getting scared that you are seeing a lot. I want you to listen more in class than to see a lot on the internet. So I'll be on the lookout for you in the Nibosh class going forward, because people see a lot on the internet. There's so many.
No problem, sir.
I'm going to be on the internet as well, so I have to be careful of what I say. So I'm drawing my mouth to keep quiet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Emma, for your questions. Okafor, do you want to come in now?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm even committing one. I'm violating safety because I'm driving. So let me be real quick. Thank you so very much for the contribution for the
Okay,
presentation.
Ima. Sorry
Hello?
for cutting you. Yeah, sorry for cutting
Okay.
you. Can you park
Okay.
before you ask your question? Yes, we are 60,
Yeah.
so
I'll
let's
park.
practice it. Yeah.
I'll park now. I'll park now.
All right, so park and then you can ask your question.
I'll park now.
Okay, go ahead.
Now.
Thank you very much for not letting
Yeah.
us have a recorded accident online.
Yes.
I'm coming from the mechanic. It's been a stressful 3 days for me with this car. So I want to add, because I heard the questions people are asking. So I want to touch one or two things. First thing is that I want to tell them that tell everybody that as a safety personnel, to do well with risk assessment and all, you have to be a very good storyteller. You have to be able to paint pictures. Whenever you look, when you look at something and you see something, you should be able to paint a picture. Do a lot of probabilities in your head. What could go wrong? How would this affect somebody? Now, our first column in risk assessment templates that we use is mostly who may be harmed and how. Once you're able to answer that question of who may be harmed and how the person will be harmed, I think you're good with the hazard identification and then going forward to do the risk assessment. So that is that about that. Also, Sir, Chief, I want to also use this opportunity there are some people that contacted me for classes and I asked them to be here. So I don't know if you could give them an opportunity to introduce themselves so that the administration can take it up from there, sir. Thank you so very much, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. We'll do that.
Chief, we would want to leave a number behind so that after the webinar, you can get in touch with the team. And then any follow-ups that would come after. I see a hand from KNB. I know this person, Koku Intifu. So Kojo, please go ahead with the question.
For once, I thought he was a player from Manchester City, Kevin De Bruyne. I didn't know it's.
No, this is Kojo Buahen. Kojo, please go ahead.
I'm a United fan. Okay. So that I have a suggestion. I think there should be a webinar on hazard and risk. Listening to some of our colleagues here, you can see that there is this confusion between what is a hazard and a risk. In fact, personally, I have had arguments with colleagues because you sometimes see a hazard being in the space of a risk, or a risk in where you're supposed to have a hazard. So probably if we can have a webinar on hazard and risk, I think that will come a long way to do away with the confusion we usually come across. Thank you.
Thank you
We'll be
very
doing
much.
that in due course. That's a request.
Yes.
that will be dealt with. We'll do that in due course. In fact, we have one on that will do good justice onto that. So I promise you that one in due course. Very detailed with some very good videos as well. So watch this space on that, okay?
Yeah. Chief, I think the discussion is getting more interesting, but
Yeah.
we need to watch our time as well. So if you have any further questions, please connect with us, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. And then, Chief, you wanted to show a video on.
Yeah, I wanted to show a video.
Yes.
I believe time is good, but we've done something, but I'm going to show a video, and we still have one or two things to say before we round up. But I just want you to listen to what, sorry, I keep on forgetting his name. Can you see the screen? Can people see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
I've forgotten what his name is. I keep on forgetting. Can you see the screen? What can you see on the screen?
A video.
Can you see a gentleman talking, or can you hear the voice?
No.
Oh God.
The screen is the screen is blank. It's just
okay. I will
it's
try
like a video.
again from another source again. Okay. Well, let me see if I can share this.
Chief, don't forget to drop your contact number, please.
I'll do that. Okay. Let's see if we can.
Okay. Yeah. Channels. Bawa.
Can you hear the voice?
Yes.
I remember what I told the Senate that my vision for the EFCC is to see if that one day I am the chairman who ask somebody to go and do ABC. And you look at me to say that Mr. Chairman, I understood what you are saying, but I'm not going to really because SOP section 3 paragraphs this said this and this. And then I'll look at him and then I'll say, thank you, I can't do anything. And that's the how it is. But it's like works with rules and regulations, you understand? So that is what we are working on. And this SOP is not only but the entirety of what you know the EFCC, all the factors we already have and very soon, we're going to publish it, we're going to approve it, and we're going to launch it. So that EFCC, will be operating on autopilot. And that is what the country needs. Once we are in the system will generate whether or not we have done something. Once we are doing it.
I must say this. Apologies. I'm not a politician, and I don't want people to talk about EFCC. I've just used that as a case study for risk assessment.
Yeah.
Are people asking you, do you have it in there? People look at the risk assessment and they can view it. We talk about health and safety. Things should be documented and written down. In some part of the world, if you don't see one man, you cannot carry out any job because that's the man that knows it. It's the man they must call before anything goes wrong. Documentation, SOPs, risk assessment, policies and procedures should be available to all to access and be able to draw from it from. People should be able to look at it and say, section 1 said this, and nobody's above it. And that is the word they call autopilot. It's so clear. We have another sort of a video I played in a neighbor's class, which I would have loved to play, but due to time, you have a right to look at the safety manager and say, sorry, the risk assessment has not stated that. But when the risk assessment is not in place, the supervisor will say, carry it that way. You don't listen to the word of mouth. It's who has assessed that risk? Who has assessed it? Who has determined it is okay for you to do it that way or carry it? It's not about my manager said so. It's not about EFCC or the gentleman, but the message is what we are trying to accrue to say. That's why all of us, we all want to work in Mobil. We want to work in Total, Chevron, Shell. Why? Because they have all these procedures in place. Then when we work indigenously, we say it doesn't work because the MD does not want it. Tell your MD to go to a Shell site and say it's the MD and see whether it will toe line. It is how we set up our track. And the problem we have as safety people again is we need to stop copying other people's risk assessment. When you put that in front of your MD just looks at you and says, who wants to deal with this nonsense? You've got to tailor-make your risk assessment to suit your business operation and your business needs. You are copying Chevron's risk assessment. You are saying we will train everybody. You cannot train everybody. You train one person. That one person will come and train all the rest. Where is the money? That's the challenge safety has in Africa. Let's stop talking about MD. Me too, I'm a director. I own a business. I'm not in business for charity to just spend money. For you to spend the money yourself, it's got to be justifiable. It's the business case we lack. But then, as usual, we blame management. My management does not care. Which management do not care? Why is he in business? It's a business to make money. We send the wrong message to management. I work in UK as well. Do you think it is easy? You just tell MD, you must do this, he will do that. You have to make a case for it. He has the right to ask the question. We need to get back to the basics and keep it simple. And as I've said, please stop popping massive risk assessments that the MD cannot relate with. Just as someone said, trip. The man looks at you, trip or waiting. Then at the end of the day, he can see that you are telling him to spend 50,000 on trip alone. It's the dustbin now. He will start querying, why did we employ safety? But please, let's hang around every two weeks, and we'll continue to share wisdom together. I will continue to learn from you. You will hear me, we will agree, we will disagree, and we'll talk about it. But let's go back to what that gentleman has said. Get your organization involved. And as Kubura said, please, stop being a safety guy that will do a risk assessment alone and say, I want to show them I can do it alone. Let it be a team effort. Call the workers. Safety, bring yourself, you are part of the workers. Get your workers involved. Sit down with them to do a risk assessment. Stop going into those WhatsApp groups. Send me risk assessment template to use. You now take it to your organization. It doesn't work. How will it work? The company you are copying for, their end of year balance was 30 million. How much is your own? 2 million. You are bringing something that ain't going to work. We need to work relatively with our staff. And always remember, my risk assessment, I'm going to be dealing with people that cannot read. What is the level of competency of your staff? You have to take all this into holistic view all the time. And that is a challenge we have a lot of the time. One rule does not fit all. You cannot say this is how it will happen to everybody. You may have to do yours in a way that would be a little bit different to the business needs, to the competency level of your organization, because some of your people cannot even read. And then you now say that is a risk assessment sign. You may have to speak with them in their language that they understand. And also bear that in mind. Together, we can make it work. And that is what we need to understand. Make things available for people. Get people involved. Consult with the workers. Talk to everybody. Don't say safety is doing everything all by yourself. How can you do it alone? You need other people. Because if it's going to be used by other people, you need other people's involvement as well. And if you don't get other people's involvement, how will it be used? How will they use it? And that is one of the things we always have to bear in mind. And if you're going to do a test run as well to make sure you are open to constructive criticism and be ready for feedback. Feedbacks are quite fantastic so that you can make it work better for other people. So I think that is what I will like to obviously say to people as well. It is always going to be good for you to see how you adapt risk assessment to your organization. You may not even do 5 columns as Kuburat was talking about. Yours may be 2 columns alone or 3 columns specific to your business operation. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. All in all, we are coming close to the end of today's session. Chief, you want to tell us what we have ahead of us?
Yes, I was unable to finish my slide earlier on, so if I can just quickly do your indulgence quickly just to try and finish that before that we finish. And you don't get opportunities like this to talk to people about what we do or what we are all about. So again, just for people to know what we tend to do and what that we are as well. We do a lot of good trendy safety PPEs as well. We are safety joggers sort of representative. We are looking for retailers. Retailers, please get in touch with us so that you can get quality shoes. You can get lovely trainers like this, which serves your needs. Stand out in a crowd as a safety guy. Wear trendy trainers that protect you as well. That is very good. And they are all affordable. As you can see, the prices are not much for the Ghanaians as well. And you are sure of quality. And this is the one I'm currently rocking right now, is this lovely joggers. Again, it's got your steel toe top, anti-slippery, it's not gonna bend, very, very comfortable as well. This is trending and this is looking good as well. So feel free, get in touch. And we are also into fire service as well. We maintain fire life safety system for people, fire extinguishers, maintenance, your fire system. We can help you to maintain that happily as well and do that on a very good one. We currently do that for some of our clients as well. And a little bit, that is what we are all about as well. So what's going to happen in the next coming weeks? Next coming weeks, we're excited because we're going to go to Ghana. We'll be in Ghana. So I'm looking forward to seeing Obed. I'm looking forward to meeting with the other Ghanaian guys online. It'll be nice to see you guys when I'm in Ghana, please. I'll be in Accra. Don't tell me Accra is too far, okay? Let's hang around and meet. Let's have a safety type of a movement together. On the 26th of September, we will be delighted to have this gentleman, which Sadat will tell you about, to be talking to us about work at height safety. And I'm sure you don't want to miss this section with this gentleman that will be coming to talk to us about work at height. And I'm looking forward to this because I believe I'm going to have some contribution to talk about work at height as well on the 26th of September. Okay, Sadat, you want to give us an insight into who this gentleman is as well, so that people will know that it's a date they've got to mark in their diary.
Awesome. Yes. So the speaker is Kojo Intifubuahin. He's on the call. And I have personally worked.
Oh, is he on the call? Oh, he's the KNB man. Oh my God, he's the one that was kept to the ground. Oh my God, how can I miss that KNB? Okay.
Yeah, it was a delight working with him. I was working as he was my manager when we were at the mines, and his amount of knowledge in HSC would baffle you. So please join us next 2 weeks as he delves into work at height safety. I'm sure this is one of the high risk activities, or yes, let me put it like high risk activity that a lot of us encounter at our workplaces. Join us, let's get a different perspective and add on to what you already know. So make a date with us next week.
I'm going to be excited because even from that diagram that guy have up there with analysis, it will be interesting when Kwado does the slide. And where is he based in Ghana? Where is he in Ghana? Is he in
Kojo, are you in Accra now?
Currently, I'm in Kumasi.
Oh God,
okay,
here we go.
Okay.
That's 4 hours from Accra. That's every excuse everybody tells me. 3 hours from here. I must see you. I need to be interested because work at height is a massive one for a lot of us. And I'll be interested to see how you guys still work at height. In UK, it's always one area. Can we avoid it? Can we not work at height? And I will share with you how in construction, we are avoiding working at height anymore. We don't want to work at height. It's that Eric PD, that elimination. Can we eliminate it? So right from the design stage, we are saying, no way. We are not going to expose people to all these harnesses. This will be an interesting section for me. I'm going to be in Accra definitely on that day, and I'm sure I'm going to have to log in because I have a class section at that particular time, and I will want to hear this section, how people are still working at height. Ours is definitely we are now looking at that more like a red flag. Can we avoid it? As the first question that we ask, and it's going to be interesting to obviously see this light. I can't wait for that 2 weeks to come and see that as well. Ibiyemi, you have your hands raised up. What's your question, Ibiyemi? Ibiyemi.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes. It's not actually a question, it's like a contribution.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I like the point that you made about involving workers in a risk assessment.
Good.
I just want us to know that these workers, they've been on the job, they know how it is, and for us to be able to get very good risk assessments and a very relatable one, we should involve them. And try as much as possible to go to sites, especially if you are working in construction, go to sites, meet with them, talk with them, just get to their level so that you'll be able to get information from them. Don't feel, oh, I'm health and safety. I don't have to relate to workers. No, it shouldn't be like that. Because you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. And remember, you are doing this risk assessment for them and people that are coming into your site. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your lovely contribution. I used to say this ages ago and I don't want to say this live on air, but I'll say it and people might contest it. I always say to a lot of health and safety guys, if you are that health and safety guy where you wear your suit and tie like David Popper is wearing in this lovely picture, and that is what you wear to work every day, and you are not working for Barclays or any of those major banks or GTB, and you are construction, well, look for another job. I said it all. Go to site. You work in the office. You send risk assessment onto site. They laugh at you. Look at him. He has no clue of the job. Hey, safety. Safety will identify a lead when you don't submit the job. That's how incidents happen. Get out to site. Go and observe, as people are saying. Go and observe the job. The job is happening out there. You are in the head office drinking tea and saying, I'm corporate health and safety. Get out there and see what is happening. That's how you're going to get information for your risk assessment. Not in WhatsApp group. And as my Emmanuel said, I go online. What is there online? Australian safety, Malaysia safety, Indonesia safety. You belong to Nigeria. Where's your risk assessment on the sun? I don't see risk assessment talking about sun in Nigeria. And you are up there in the burning sun. You've not done a risk assessment on it. You start talking about cold weather as if you are in UK. Get out to site and see what is happening. Then you will see the real world out there. And then relate with the guys. This thing I wrote, does it make sense? As the BME say, it is for them. You cannot barb my hair in my absence. The Yorubas will say, you won't barb my hair. Oh, I got to be present there. I've got to be at the table when you are discussing me. And that is why those things don't work. They will come back and say, "Dead." Don't make it dead. You are part and parcel of these people as well. Go out to sites regularly. Don't be where you shouldn't be. And part of what we get is people are doing a risk assessment. They've never been to the site where that work will be carried out before in their life. All they are relying on is Google Map to show them a lot of things. You have to make sure you get out and you see what is happening all the time and get it right, which is quite important. And that is what a lot of us don't do. Please, don't get me wrong. I'm not against you going online. I'm not against a WhatsApp. But at least if you are going to copy something, copy it and make it relevant to your workplace, not just to think that is what that you do. And that is why people are talking about trip, electrocution. You need to get it right. And as BME has said, go and talk to these guys. They are the ones. If it happens to them, you are in trouble. If it doesn't happen to them, then you are doing well. So it is in your best interest to make sure you know what is happening out there, not to be in the office and be in suit and tie and say, I'm corporate safety. Go and look for a job in GTB or Zenith Bank. You are in construction, you wear tie and suits to work. I beg, it's not for you. Buy nice safety joggers and go to site and trend it. Wear that safety joggers on site. Come up with safety. This joggers is different, sir. Wear your jeans. That's where you are. You got to get your hands dirty to know that what those guys are exposed to. And that's why they laugh at us. Look at safety. And remember, your MD knows the job as well. You say, what is this risk assessment about? Please, please, and please, I hope you've taken a lot from today. And as we rightly said, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be all about this. And we are still open. We are always open for business. If you've got any questions or any burning issues, get in touch with us as Kafela. Our numbers is still all the same. use any of our social media handle. Instagram is Kafela, Twitter is Kafela. Go on to LinkedIn, we are there as well. Let's always come together and let's discuss. Let's have a conversation about these things. And I'm sure that our generation, we can still make an impact on safety in Nigeria. I'm excited about Ghana because Ghana is opening up and I'm so excited that, you know, I keep on talking about it. Please permit me. Interesting things are happening in Ghana, and Nigeria has always been our place and we are still there as well. We are open. Feel free if you've got any concerns or any contribution on how we can get better and how we can do business, get in touch with us at Kafela Global Concept Limited. And we currently have a NIBOSH class going on. If you want to sit down in the class as an observer, get in touch with the Lagos office, get in touch with the Ghana office, and we will allow you to come in and observe free of charge. Maybe that will ginger you. As Emmanuel sent me a message, this is a person that gingered me to do NIBOSH. I like that word. I don't know how they ginger you, but I say that they ginger you. So I want to ginger you as well to do a course in future. So I will hand over back to Sadat if you don't have any question, and Sadat can take it forward from there. And I say a very big thank you to you all for coming. It's nice to see you guys online. Thanks for waiting till this late. It's a lovely day for some of us here. We're quite happy and excited because of what is going on somewhere. So it's very good for us.
Okay, on that note, everyone will agree with me that Kubrat has done a great job today. Kubrat, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Like I indicated, I have a note. I have my notepad. Can you see my notepad? I have a whole lot of notes taken.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then to the rest of the team, please watch this space. Kafela brings you educative discussions like this every 2 weeks. So sign up and then let us all learn together. And I believe together we can be better HSE practitioners. Thank you all for joining. And please, like I indicated in the chat, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for maybe you didn't get something well that you want clarity on. You can go back and then watch the video. Thank you all for joining and see you next 2 weeks. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.